Hello, welcome back to All For United WSL. It seems a bit strange, doesn't it, doing it on a Monday, a fan It's been, I don't know, must have been a long time since we've done a preview on a Monday. I'm talking like years here when we maybe did a preview from maybe like a Conti Cup game or something like that. It's been a long time. But here we are. Obviously, we've got the big week get me words out. Big midweek clash. That's what I was going for. Obviously, with Chelsea, the rearranged fixtures from the weekend. So lots to get into, lots to talk about as well. As you can see, we've got our Chelsea representative back. It's been a while. I don't think you were on the reverse fixture, Rob, when we did. I don't even know if we did a preview for the reverse fixture in the end.
I don't think we did. I don't think we did because that was the one that got rearranged in the first place, didn't it?
Yeah, and they were they couldn't find a date, and it was like really short notice for like a Sunday or something. Yeah, so it's been a while since you've been on this side of the channel. I know you've been on All For Women's Football a few times as well. Yeah, good to have you back. I'm sure there's loads to get into, and I'm sure that you're going to have a lot of questions as well aimed your way, certainly after the weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But very quickly, me and Barry are just going to quickly discuss. It's our first show since it got announced. Obviously, it got announced on Friday. United love a Friday announcement, don't they? I think every new contract in the last, for a long time has been on a Friday, so there we go. But Fallon tullis-joyce extended to 2028. Barry, just your thoughts on it, really? Because I'm assuming you're as, I guess, happy as everyone else.
PTJ. I'm absolutely buzzing. Some of us were, as I said, wanting young PTJ to be playing last season and wasn't. And I don't know whether or not to doff my cap to Skinner and co and give them the win for playing her when they finally did choose to play her, which is obviously when Mary had left. Or whether or not to be rather annoyed that we just didn't play her last season because maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't have lost our record of finishing fourth or above every single year in the WSL. But I don't think we can understate just how important Fallon tullis-joyce has been. I don't think anybody truthfully expected our defensive record to be quite as good as it has been this season. And that's not a slight on them. I just think that generally, when you looked at the season before, it didn't look at the same people, pretty much. So, no, I don't think anybody really expected that. But the fact that we've got that, the fact that she signed till 2028, the fact that she clearly wants to be here. We've had so many years, it feels like, of our best players ending up to go elsewhere and just sort of leaving at the end of their contract. For us to actually turn around, see that she has been given a cap for America, see that she's doing as well as she is doing internationally and domestically, and to lock that down, I think is probably, I say this tentatively, probably the smartest bit of business that we've done since reforming, because we've actually taken the initiative and, we've extended contracts before, but I would say none probably as important as locking down someone whose star is clearly on the rise.
And someone as well who, from my understanding, wasn't out of contract this summer, I don't think. So it's not like we've waited until the end to do it. We've seen the rise, as you said. Her stock was clearly rising. There was a lot of potential interest in her as well. So it was important, I think, to get that one done from that point of view. So, there's a lot of chat as well. Sport has mentioned interest in the Fallon wants or will be involved in the interview with the goalkeeper coach. This is something we tweeted earlier from Mark's press conference this morning. I know some people see this as a bad thing. I don't think it is. I think from Fallon's point of view, she's got to be in, or maybe not have the final say. That's not how companies work. Certainly not at football clubs, but certainly she's got to get on with the person that is going to be training her and everything else. So I've got no issue with her wanting to be involved. I think again, Mark said this in the press conference earlier, but I think it just shows her character in terms of her personality away from just football on the pitch and everything else, that she's willing to want to do something like that and help in the process. So I really don't think it's a bad thing.
I think that's really quite important. You look at the goalkeepers union, they're a mad bunch, a lot of them, but they're a very tight-knit one. Generally, coaches, certainly at this level, you're not necessarily having just defensive coaches, just attacking coaches. They might cover a few different jobs. But I think for the goalkeepers one, that's really important. And from Fallon's point of view, when you look at what she is like as a human, you see how she goes wandering around the schools to teach them all about what's going on under the sea and all of those sorts of things. I think it's just a mark of her character that she sees people like Kayla, she sees people like Saf, and she wants them to also do well. And so as a result, I'm sure that she's not just thinking of who's going to help her, because let's be honest, I don't think she really needs huge amounts of coaching to get to a level. But the fact that she's worried about the club and the next generation, I think is absolutely brilliant. And I don't understand why people would be disappointed about having someone as socially conscious as Fallon making that type of, not decision, but a decision to be involved in doing that. I think it's massive, and I think such an important thing. Because as you say, there's only 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4 or 5 if you're including some of the youngsters as well, and then they've all got to get on with that one person. And Wilco is such a big part of our club. Like, it's ridiculous how important. We've probably not had somebody in the backroom staff as important leave since Martin Home. So I think replacing this, vital, because you get the wrong goalkeeper coach and all of a sudden you could find yourself in up a creek without a paddle, and we don't want to be that, especially not when you've got a marine biologist who's probably quite good at paddling. So what's that?
I think as well, it's an important point. Obviously, when Martin left, you look at the impact the season after that had. I would put Wilco in the same bracket as Martin in terms of the impact in the club. So, I think it is important that Fallon's in. Obviously, I think Mark has said before about the leadership group as well, that Fallon stepped up into that as well. She's obviously involved in that kind of thing. And I think it's a brilliant thing. And like I said, 2028 new contract, which, as I kind of tweeted this at the time, that you've got Maya Letitia, Millie Turner, Jay Riviere, and Fala tullis-joyce. That's 4 out of our 5. Of the back 5 that is starting most weeks, tied down to 2028. I think that's massive, especially considering the club have set the target of winning the league by 2028. So, I think that's massively important on that one. And as people have said, big, in terms of the spine of the team, massively important to get that one tied down. Right, we'll move away from United just for a quick second and ask Rob about his weekend. I think in the nicest way possible, because I know lots of people are going to want to talk about it. I don't want like a full dissection of both legs and everything else, but I think the question is in terms of just from a Chelsea point of view, maybe what went wrong, do you think, or what? Because losing to Barcelona, I think we've all kind of said there's no embarrassment in that. I think most people still see them as the best team around. That's fair enough. I think 8-2 definitely raised some eyebrows over 2 legs. What do you think went kind of wrong from a Chelsea point of view, considering the margin last year was a lot closer than it was this year?
I mean, firstly, all the 8-2 joke. Someone at least got a unique 8-2 joke. I've heard all of them in the last 24 hours, At least give me some interesting new material. Guys, you got 4-1, you got 8-2, you got all these scorelines you can work with. I mean, I will say, people, I do look forward to this. You're going to be in the Champions League next year, hopefully, so you can show us how it's done. I mean, obviously, the last time you were in the Champions League, you couldn't even get past, a French club. So never mind any French club, not even the best club in France. So we'll leave it at that. But no, I think, to be honest, for Chelsea, I think the main things were it was over there were 2 5-minute periods across the 2 ties that really killed it. The 3rd to 4th goal in the first leg, because it was poor to concede. It's poor to concede from a set piece, and it's poor to, then sort of fall straight like that. And then in the second leg, I think it was the period of conceding the 2nd and 3rd goals. Like, as I sort of said at the time, what annoys me the most is the nature of the goals that were sort of scored. People say salty and rattled. No, I'm just looking forward to. I'm looking forward to you doing better. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it.
I don't think people understand Rob's humour. I think.
Yeah, I'd say I think people. Again, Connor, you were the first. You were one of the first people that got a message from me yesterday. You know that I'm this sort of person. Whether we win or lose, I don't mind it. Michael, your team's got as many WSL titles as Crystal Palace. I wouldn't start. No, I can take the medicine. I don't mind it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't a good performance. I think, as I said to someone, I think the biggest issue for Chelsea was that at times they tried to go and play Barcelona and play football against Barcelona. And that wasn't smart. What they needed to be doing was doing what Manchester City did in the group stages, which is sit in, stop, break up the space, close up the space, and make it difficult for them. Now, as I said, what frustrates me the most is the nature of the goals Chelsea conceded. They didn't concede good goals. You know, if it was things like the third goal yesterday where Pina picked up the ball and just put it into the top corner, or the fourth goal in the first day was just, some brilliant one-touch football, fine. I'll hold my hands up, accept that. The goals that conceded, long ball over the top that was poor, should have cut that one out. Second one, I think it was Baltimore fails to cut out the cross. First goal yesterday, Neem Charles should cut it out, and Germer also shouldn't have been out of position. But ultimately, I kind of, it's one of those where you sort of look at it. As soon as it was 4-1 for the first leg, I sort of said, look, at the end of the day, the second leg could be anything. We could come back, we could lose 10-0. Because ultimately, they were going to have a go as soon as the first goal was scored yesterday. You had the Nuskin chance, and then I think about 135 seconds later, they put it in. I will say that it's probably, it's one of those things. I think the result was coming for a while. I sort of said it to people for a while for Chelsea that, to be honest, I'm amazed we've stayed unbeaten this long. I'm amazed we've stayed unbeaten this long because we've not necessarily been playing very well since Christmas, but we've been getting results. And what I do think, there's two things really. Number one, I think it'd be really bad for the league if Chelsea go unbeaten this season because I don't think we've been the best, like the de facto best team, and it's been a state where looked like we should go unbeaten. Number two, I also think that it's shown a lot of raised a lot of general questions, I think, for the WSL of the fact we say the WSL is really, really competitive. And I think it is getting more competitive. But at the same time, I think it's still a level below. Because I will be completely honest, I think Arsenal getting through to the you're only unbeaten because of an offside.
I think Brighton.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about that. It's not as if there was an extra 20 minutes in that game we could have scored in, we only beat you because of a penalty, so I'm not sure that's But anyway, it's funny this, because I expected all of this, and the thing is, I said it to someone. It says the nature and the stand of Chelsea that winning potentially 2-3 trophies this season, going unbeaten domestically, will be seen as a satisfactory season. It won't be seen as a good season by a lot of fans. And I personally take a bit of a step back on that view, is that I think people should celebrate titles more. I think there's very few of them available. And I think teams should take more of it. And that's also why, and you'll remember this last time when I said this to you about the FA Cup last year, Connor. Celebrate the title and enjoy it, because you never know when it's going to come round again. And I said this to someone from an Arsenal perspective. And I said this, obviously, you're in the Champions League final. But if you then don't win that, then you suddenly feel the entire season has... almost, again, you feel really deflated after losing a final because it's the worst feeling in the world, as you know, having won and lost them.
Yeah, certainly don't need reminding of that. It was one of the worst days of my life, stood at Wembley watching Chelsea lift the FA Cup. But I think you are right. And we've been saying this on this channel for a while, and it's one of the reasons the kind of title hasn't felt, even though I've never fully believed that we could catch Chelsea, in terms of the title, it's never felt out of reach because Chelsea you could look at the Everton game, the Brighton game, I've never looked at them and gone, they're not blowing teams away. They're not like last season or previous seasons. They were always winning 3-4-0 and you just knew they'd get the first, whatever. But Chelsea weren't battering teams in the same way that they have been in previous years. Now, obviously, a lot of injuries this season and everything else, albeit the squad is still stacked enough for other players to come in. But I do agree in the sense that I think there's a couple of games this season quite more than usual that you can look at. And I think it's a shame, really, that I know the media is still trying to push a title race. I still don't think there is one. I think even if United win on Wednesday, it's just delaying the inevitable now that Chelsea will win it in the next couple of weeks. It's more of just a when. Rather than because I'm pretty sure you can win it on Wednesday, actually, if you better Arsenal's results anyway. So
I think we need to, isn't it? Yeah, I think we need to bet whatever Arsenal do, I think.
So from that point, that's what I mean. So I think, when you're looking at it a couple of seasons ago, I think we spoke about it on this channel, recently, when United broke the points record and still didn't win the league because Chelsea then broke that points record to win the league in 22-23. That's the kind of Chelsea I look at as the best Chelsea from that point of view. And this season, maybe we've not seen that for different reasons as well. So I don't think the Barca result was a surprise. I can't lie. I thought the second leg, I actually replied to something on Twitter. I thought Chelsea were going to win the second leg but lose the tie. I didn't expect it to be the same again. I
think that's it. I think it's the nature of as I said, it's the way that it happened. It was sort of the way that it sort of happened. I do think what, as I sort of said to someone, I do think one of the things that was forgotten from Chelsea is that the players that have been out and been missing. In the first half of the year, if you ask Chelsea players who the best defender had been, it had been Buchanan. Up until Christmas, she was having a very good season. Did her ACL. We've not quite looked as good from that point. Lauren James, obviously, you know what Lauren James can do. And Lauren James, ultimately, in a similar way to Mariona Caldente, I said that she's the player in our squad that could have scored the goal that Mariona scored yesterday. There aren't many other players in the squad that could have done that, pick it up there and just be like, right, top corner, put it straight in. And then Sam Kerr, who obviously, I had some silly conversations in this, and people said, you've survived so long without her. It's games like these where you need your clinical goal scorers, and you need them, because you saw it with Payol. Payol had, I think, 4 really good chances across the tie. One of them she was Hampton to a good save, one of them she put wide, 2 of them went in. That is where you need your clinical, your real clinical scorer. And you see, again, obviously, I know, the name Alessia Russo is banned on this channel, so I'll say it very quickly. But you see the performance that she put in for Arsenal, and, the way they look up front when they have her, as opposed to when they say a Blackstenius in there, who I don't think is a bad player, but I don't think holds a candle, really, to Russo in terms of an all-round footballer. Ramirez isn't Kerr, exactly. No, this is exactly it. And I've said this to someone. Ramirez is a really good... I think Ramirez is a good footballer, but Ramirez's issue has been she's played so much this season, she looks exhausted. And we haven't had the options to rotate players in and out. Officials only now finally got back to full fitness. It'll be really interesting to see if they use her from the start tomorrow, or on Wednesday, actually, because she, looked in and came in good nick against Crystal Palace. But I do think, I do think that one of the other things I said to it is that at the same time, we're sort of looking at but Barcelona. I do agree with that. I do agree. Chelsea didn't have the sort of control of it, and that was the big issue. They didn't have the control. They gave them too much respect. They needed to bite into it more. And partly, I also think, is that Walsh coming in January, Walsh needs to play in an entirely different system to what we currently do. In the summer, we need to go ahead and Bjorn didn't play because she's not fit, and that's why Bjorn didn't play. We need to go ahead and get in the summer. If you're going to keep Walsh in there, you need to have midfielders in there. Again, Cuthbert is one of them. You need someone else that can play as the 8, and whether that's you play Nuskin in there more and you start playing her as an 8 again, or you get an 8 in or whatever, you need to put a midfield in that balances Walsh, because Walsh is a good footballer, but at the same time, Walsh has things, she's got things she's very, very good at and things she's not as strong at. And you need players in there to complement it. Now, the fact of the matter is Barcelona, with that midfield of Patry, Bonmati and Alexia, it's just absurd. It is one of those, it's a bit like in the old days where you looked at Barcelona menu, you had Xavi, Iniesta and Messi in that 3, and you looked at it and you were just like, we're done here, to be honest. But I think, it'll be really interesting to see how United sort of approach Wednesday, from my point of view, because I think I wonder if they'll come out and attack, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do come out and attack, and I think that might be a dangerous decision, because Chelsea are at their worst when they are, sort of when they've been down. Chelsea are a wounded animal and never a good proposition to face.
I couldn't unmute my mic then if people were wondering why I was tapping it, but I wouldn't unmute my thing there. But that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Barry, in terms of the approach United take, because certainly I did. I don't know whether you were on the show or not. I think you were, actually. It was me, you and Phil. The reaction show to the reverse fixture of this back in November or whenever we played Chelsea at Kingsmeadow, that we just didn't attack Chelsea at all. I think we had whatever possession, what was it, like 1 shot on target or something like that in the whole game, and everything else. And I just think, is that maybe something we do well, to be fair, I would hope we do something differently, because I don't want that again. In terms of how poor we were at Kingsmeadow, albeit the scoreline was, to be fair, I think the scoreline was kept down because of Fallon, on the day on that one. But do you think this is the time maybe to attach? Do you think that we've got that in us to go for Chelsea, or do you think we still need to be a bit more reserved and maybe try and hit them on the break a little bit more? What's your kind of thinking on from that front?
I would probably take it back to the FA Cup, if I'm honest with you. You know, I think any sensible person would want to look back at where you were successful and try and think about ways in which you can increase on that. Now, there's people there, dude, you've got attack. Like, we've had this conversation already. Attack. Should really read attacker. Because that's what we kind of need Mark Skinner to be having a look for in the in the transfer window, because we don't have, you know, we're not blessed with the likes of Sam Kerr, for example, or Bunny Shaw, where they nail a ridiculous number of goals to the mast. So instead, we need to be looking at our strengths. I don't personally think we've played to Elizabeth Turlin's strengths quite as well as we could have done for the majority of the season. So the fact she scored as many as she has been incredibly good. And I've also been critical of the fact that we haven't created as much as we actually could have done. What we need to do, the God's honest truth, is that we just need to press. We need to ensure that we don't allow them the time to dictate the play. When Chelsea dictate the play, I mean, I've seen people in the chat, I don't think Chelsea are as good as they think they are. Like, they are. Like, it's an absolute fallacy to be sitting here and, you know, we're all going to laugh at Rob. Of course we are, because let's be honest, how many times a season do we get the chance to laugh at Chelsea? Like once, and here it is. So, you know, I know that people are going to take that, and absolutely, I completely get it. But it doesn't change the fact that they're the most dominant team over the last 6 years in England. So we absolutely need to be at our mettle, and we cannot allow them to dictate the play. We just can't. Plus, it's at home. This was the problem last season when we had that ridiculous last after winning the FA Cup. You can't allow teams to come in and dictate how they're going to play in your own back garden. Chelsea wouldn't allow it. They don't allow you to go to Kingsmeadow and dominate them. Certainly not for the whole 90 minutes. So that's what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to make sure we've got people that are going to chase. We're going to need people that are going to harry. We're going to need people that are going to, again, you go back to that FA Cup game, we talk about Ramirez. She didn't have a sniff, really, in that game, because we didn't allow her to dominate in the manner that she does. You know, she likes to be a little bit rough and ready up the front there. But actually, if you match that and you don't allow her those opportunities, and the referee misses a couple of things, then you're in with a really good opportunity. So I think, for me, that's going to be the vital part. And if we can force Chelsea into making mistakes, we can definitely capitalise on that. I think the big thing for me was this conversation that was said by Highline, this question right at the beginning. Are we going to face the danger type of wounded Chelsea, or actually there for the taking type of wounded Chelsea? And I think the reason why I'm intrigued by that question is because actually I don't think in all of the time that I've been following women's football that I have seen Chelsea have to react from this type of a defeat. Chelsea have lost games, like that happens, but to lose 2 games that are of such importance at a time when they wouldn't have expected, like you said, you'd expected them to have won the second game. They didn't. And instead, the same thing happened. I mean, they were mauled. They really were over the course of these 2 fixtures, and they're not going to be used to that. So, of course, you could have the old wounded tiger thing. They might indeed come out giving it the old, well, that's it, we're going to come back fighting. But equally, if we can get an early goal and pop a little bit of doubt into their minds, it just goes to show that they are fallible. They can be beaten. City managed to beat them once. You know, they just didn't manage to finish the job off in the manner that Barcelona did. So I think what we need to do is to try and take advantage. We can't allow them to get straight into dictating the play, doing what Chelsea do, and then we react to them. We have to be positive. At the end of the day, there's not really a huge amount to lose. If people are already expecting us to lose to Chelsea, at least lose giving it a go. Don't lose by being too passive and not quite doing the things that we could do. So for me, it's not all about gung-ho attack, but it's absolutely about trying to make sure that we look after the ball, chase it down. If we haven't got it, it'll be about the hard work off the ball for me. I think if we can do that, we're in with a shout.
I think that's the thing for me. That's why I was so annoyed in the reverse fixture, because it didn't seem like we wanted to do anything. We were quite happy just letting Chelsea have the ball, and then we live off that one chance. And like I said, that Mallard and Jace had a chance for the end. I think Mallard hit the bar. That goes in. You draw the game 1-1. Mark will come away from that going, yeah, great point on the road, which on paper, yes, but in the reality of the game, we weren't really in it. Like I said, if Fallon didn't pull off a couple of good saves that she did in that game, we'd have been out of it by half time. So I think in that point of view, I agree. I just want to see us just go for, like we did in the semi-final, last season, when we did just go for it from the off. We scored pretty early, got the second about 15 minutes later, and just really went for it from the off. And then you've got something to defend. Then I don't mind you just sitting back and letting the opposition have the ball, because you're defending something then. I don't like it when you're doing that from 0-0, because what are you defending? It's not like you've got anything to sit on from that point of view. So I think I know I was going to say, a lot of people are mentioning the 6-0. I don't like keep seeing that. I get enough of that from Rob. I don't need to keep seeing United fans talking about it as well. So let's just refer to it as the Old Trafford game, not the not the scoreline, please. When we're talking about that one. And you mentioned about Chelsea in terms of big losses. I'm with you. I can't remember a big. I was just having a look actually in terms of last season. There was a big loss to Arsenal, the 4-1, but then they won the next 5 after that. And then the 4-3 to Liverpool, and then they beat Bristol 8-0 just after that. So
this is why people are saying this, like, wounded Chelsea is a dangerous Chelsea. Again, in the comparison I used to, they obviously lost to City and then had that awful first half. And then that second half against City, I'd said this at the time, and I know we were watching as we were checking on WhatsApp at the time. Like, in that second half alone, that's the best I've seen Chelsea play all season. And something just switched on in that second half because they got that early goal. What I do think will be out of interest, I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this, and obviously anyone in the chat. If you did start and went gung-ho and you really went for it, and you got picked off on the counter and just picked you off, do you not think Skinner would get called naive again?
If we attacked?
If you, let's say you attack, you go forward, you're really pressed in the sort of first 10, and Chelsea, let's say, one long ball forward, they free Myra Ramirez goes in one-on-one, puts it away, and because you've gone forward and you've pushed everyone forward and you've gone really for it, do you not think Skinner would get called naive? Because this was the thing after the 6-0, was a lot of people said Skinner was really naive and, should have approached it in a different way. And yet at the same time then, like people saying, we waited all season to play exciting football. Do you really think, home to Chelsea is the game to suddenly take the handbrake off?
I think Mark Skinner is actually incredibly lucky in a fixture like this, because it genuinely doesn't matter what he does. Somebody's going to shout at him anyway. I mean, if we went attacking and we won 6-0, there'd be nobody sitting there calling him a genius. So, it's like he's got a free hit really against Chelsea, and I think that's the key thing. But you look at the 2 games that we've lost, we didn't do very well. I've been trying to find the stats for the semi-final when we won. But looking at the previous 2 games, we didn't get a shot on target in the 6-0 game, and we only had 1 shot on target, having had 3 shots in the game earlier on this season. So, that's the difference. I mean, it's the most obvious thing to say. Like, there'll be people sat here watching this going, well, it's a good job we don't pay for this channel, because what level of insight is this? But you've got to shoot. If you don't shoot and you don't try, it's never going to go in. And that's the big thing. So we've got to create the opportunities, whether that be by, like I say, doing our thing where we really put people under pressure and force them into making mistakes while they're not sure of themselves. We have got to come out of the blocks. We can't allow Chelsea to immediately settle into a rhythm, because the WSL for Chelsea is like that comfy pair of slippers. And at the moment, that comfy pair of slippers have got a rock in them, but it won't take them long to knock that rock out of it again and be back into comfy slipper time. So, we kind of need to set light to it, let the dog play with it, all the things that we would need to do to ruin that comfortable pair of slippers, in the hope that they go and buy some new ones that aren't so comfortable.
I think as well, a lot of people are mentioning the City game. I think it is comparable in some sense, in terms of that City were weakened. When we played them at the Etihad, they had a lot more players than they did for the quarterfinal, but for the semi-final. But in terms of it was a weakened side, and we went from the off because we could almost sense that at the time. I kind of hope we do that again. Like I said, don't get me wrong, that could backfire, and Chelsea have more than got the players to pick us off on the counter. That's for sure. But I just want to see us actually try this time, because our press has been good this season. We've seen it in action work well, and I want to come back to team selection from a United point of view in a second, because I definitely think there's a conversation around the midfield this time in terms of what we might see, whether that's a more defensive midfield than what we have seen in recent weeks from that point of view. But I just think when we're talking about the press and things like that, we can do it from that point of view. So I just think, I don't know why we wouldn't. But like I said, I'll come back to that, and we talk a little bit about in terms of the lineup from a United point of view. From a Chelsea point of view, this is always an odd. I always find this an odd question to ask with teams such like Chelsea and City and Arsenal. When I'm going to ask you for like a key player, because you could probably name the whole squad when you're looking at key players and things like that. But I'm going to ask the same question to Barry in a second. But in terms of a player that you think can win the game for Chelsea, who's going to be the difference maker? If you can highlight one, maybe two, who's going to be that one for Chelsea? And Mark's going to, if you're watching this is where you want to listen.
All right, you know who I'm going to say. You know who I'm going to say here. Like if she has a good game, we will win.
There's two
if she doesn't,
you're going to say.
Yeah, okay, yeah, not your favourite. It's if she has a good game, we will win. If she's not on it, we'll struggle. Erin Cuthbert. If Cuthbert is her dominant self in the midfield and is biting into everything, then Chelsea will do the midfield. They will control the midfield. They will run the midfield. She's probably pound been my player of the season. For Chelsea, I think she's one of the few players that comes out of the Barcelona tie where I actually look at it and think, yeah, actually you did give everything you needed on the pitch. You did actually put the energy in, put the effort in. People say that it's always tough, but it is. I mean, me and Connor discussed it before. If she was English, people would talk about Erin Cuthbert in a completely different light than she gets with being Scottish. People would talk about her at the level she deserves to be talked about. And she's added more goals to her game this season, especially in big games. So yeah, and obviously I'd also, the other one I think could be really important, and someone else has just mentioned that, is, I think Aggie Beaver-Jones. She's really stepped up this season, has been scoring more goals, has been playing as the wide player, playing also through the middle, but she's starting to really grow into sort of a real top quality young centre forward. And I think her ability to get in behind, her ability to dribble with the ball is something that is something that Chelsea are utilising more and more.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned Erin. Scotland are very lucky to have a player like her and Caroline Weir.
The fact you have her, Kim Little, and Caroline Weir in a midfield, and you still can't, I'd say the fact you could feel that once and you still couldn't win the game was quite distressing.
Yeah, but we won't talk about Scotland. It's never a fun conversation. But there we go. So Barry, I'm going to ask you from a United point of view then, in terms of who our key player, who's going to win us the game in this one, or it doesn't necessarily have to be the goal scorer, but in terms of someone who's going to be the important one. Have you picked one out yet from the United squad?
I've been sat here. Obviously, I asked you through the chat what I was going for, because I thought you wanted me to pick a Chelsea player to begin with. I was like, oh, okay, we're doing that, are we? But I've genuinely been sat here and I'm struggling. And I started to think, why am I struggling? Because there's so many players you can mention. If PTJ has a good game and can keep the scoreline down, we only need to nick a goal. So that's brilliant. Ditto if the back line are doing their job and can lock players down. That's going to be just as helpful. You get into the midfield. If Tooney's on fire, we know what she can do in a moment of magic. There's no problems there. If Elizabeth Turland is on fire and finds the net with some regularity. What that basically said to me is, and you're not going to like this answer, Connor, but I think it's the sensible answer, and I can't always go with your flights of fancy, is that actually it's not going to be about one player for Manchester United. It's going to have to be about the team. The whole team is going to have to perform. We couldn't have a passenger. Every player has to play to the absolute best of their ability in order for us to get past Chelsea. And I think if Rob, and I say if Rob was being honest, he's not he's been lying, but if Rob's being honest, he'd say the same thing in the game against Barcelona. If Chelsea were going to get past Barcelona, every single player had to be at their absolute best, and they weren't. And as a result, that's why they didn't do it.
Just on that, there's one thing I want to say to that, and this was the thing that did really impress me about Barcelona yesterday, and especially in the second half. They were obviously 3-0 up on the day, and yet the sheer bloody mindedness and willingness and work rate to put tackles in and put challenges in, they could easily have switched off for that second half. They could easily have done it. But Patrick O'Hara, I love Patrick O'Hara. I've said this before. I think she's the most underrated player in world football. Again, the fact that Lexi and Bonmati get so much of the acclaim. If you took Patry out, they look a complete different midfield because she's so balanced. The amount of work rate she got through and the amount of battling, she was still treating as if they were 1-0 down. And it's that level of mentality and that work rate that I think WSL sides don't have. I'll be honest. I don't think any WSL side has it in the level that Barcelona have it. And it was quite something to see in the second half at that level, just to see that level. And I think that's what teams have to get to. And I do think if United want a positive result on Wednesday, then they need to do that. What I do also think is a possibility, and I don't necessarily want to put this into the world, but I do think it's a possibility. I think both sides might be content to play for a draw, because a draw sort of suits both sides. And I don't necessarily think it is like what Chelsea primarily want. But at the same time, Chelsea, again, the priority is, they get a point in that. I think they'd be quite confident getting 3 points between Tottenham and Liverpool, especially at Stamford Bridge. United, I think a point guarantees you Champions League football?
No. If we draw against City, then yes, but not.
Okay, yeah. So you need 2 points from the remaining 9, effectively.
Kind of. I'm pretty sure. What's the gap now? It's 5 points, isn't it? So if we draw this one, we're 6 ahead with 2 games left. So.
And do you have the superior goal difference, if I remember correctly?
Pretty sure we do.
But let's be honest, we don't want to be going into the last game with a goal difference.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because I was going to say the interesting jeopardy that you have is that you don't really want to go into that final game, because Arsenal will want to go into that final game even if they don't have a lot to play for on there, and they want to go into the Champions League final now in good form. Exactly. And suddenly now they want to, even if they don't necessarily need to win it for points, they want to win it for pride.
But in the spirit of answering your question, Connor, I will pick not an individual player, but an individual position. So I think whoever plays in like the Dominic Janssen, Hinata Miyazawa role, I think they're going to be the key person, because the transition from defence to attack, and also the ability to marshal that back four and help to try and keep the ball away from the goal as best as possible, is probably going to be the most important one. If we can, I can't even believe I'm about to say this, but if we can dictate some of the play that's going on around the midfield, you get yourself into a really good position. So I will go with the position. That one will be the deciding factor for me.
It's funny you say. I'm going to come back to you with a question on that in just a second. In answer to the goal difference, United are on 27, City are on 18. However, a lot of people are talking about City's last game being Palace. Obviously, it is, and we've got Arsenal away. However, that's relying on City beating us at Old Trafford. Even if we get a draw at Old Trafford, that's enough. For United, that last game won't matter. So City have got to come to Old Trafford and win whatever happens on Wednesday and whatever happens on the final day. And they're not going to. So I'm not worried from that point of view.
Just taking a whole team and just stood there on the goal line.
Can I just say, you saying that is the sort of thing, Connor, that ends up getting clipped. There is someone in this chat right now. I hope that they're clipping this.
Yeah, I did see Becky join. She's cheering on Chelsea on Wednesday, I'm sure. She wasn't happy with you, really.
Yeah, to be honest, it wouldn't shock me if it ended up being a draw. Because I said this is something, it does suit. I don't like putting this out there, but it's one of those things. I think both teams are pragmatic enough to know that it sort of suits them. And I think if you offered, if you said to Chelsea and United fans before the game, and I think we both hate to admit this, we would both, if we said, let's take a draw on Wednesday, no injuries and move on, I think both of us on paper would take it. And I know none of us will like admitting that because we always want our team to win, but I think on paper all of us would take it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've just realised the gap's 4 points, not 5, so a draw doesn't actually suit us. So goal difference is kind of irrelevant. I thought it was 5. So ignore everything I've just said. A draw is pretty pointless if City obviously beat us at Old Trafford. Then we would probably have to win on the final day against Arsenal. So, yeah.
It's not pointless, is it? Because you get one. So I'm not having that. That is some terrible maths. Kids watching.
That's horrendous. On the midfield, Puzzling Times kind of put an interesting point in, obviously, about yellow cards. Mayer and Grace are 1 away from suspension. With the City game coming up and Arsenal obviously come up, they don't carry over to the FA Cup, so we're fine on that one. It's just these last 2 league games after Chelsea. And it kind of leads me on to the midfield conversation. And it's kind of a one or the other, I think, in terms of Toom will play, we would imagine. Hinney, I think, is probably undroppable because we dropped her against Liverpool and look what happens. And every other game she's played, we've won or better than, or in terms of competitive draw, whatever, like against West Ham. Now, I think there's a choice here between Dom and Grace, and I think that's my question to you, Barry, in terms of what would you do? Whether you go Dom, Hinney, and Toom, whether you go Hinney, what we've done for the last however long, and Hinney, Grace, and Toom, or would you just change someone else?
Honestly, like, it kind of depends on how you want to play. But if you ask me personally, I would probably start Dom. I think that added layer of protection kind of gives you almost a back 5 if you need to, so she can drop in. But I think it would make sense to start Dom and Hinney, and that's not because I don't think that Grace Clinton is a good player, and not because I don't think she can play alongside Tooney, because I believe that she can. I just think that those are for games when you're expecting to have lots of chances. The chances are that we may not. I mean, I managed to find the one that we won 2-1. Do you know how many shots on target we had when we won 2-1?
Like 5?
2.
Oh,
5 shots all in all, but only 2 of them were on target. So literally we scored with every shot that was on target. So, we don't, as a rule. I mean, we can sit here and talk about what we'd like to see. The simple truth is that I can't imagine Mark Skinner's going to try and drop anything new that we haven't already seen before. So as a result, I do think it would probably make sense to try and give ourselves that little bit more protection. Frankly, if one or the other of Mayer and Millie can get a yellow, like, it's not the end of the world. You just put Dominique Janssen in there. So, this is why we've got her. She's a world-class defender. We can cover one. What we can't do is cover both at the same time. So that's where it would become an issue for me. But yeah, I think common sense dictates that midfield is often where this game is won or lost. And I think if it got to a game of long ball, we're probably slightly better equipped in terms of pace up top. Slightly.
I think it's an interesting. I mean, I didn't even think of it when I asked the question, but Becky said maybe go Dom and save Mayer for maybe City on that point. I didn't think. I mean, I hate to debate. It won't be because Mark is just not going to drop the captain, is he? From that point of view, and I don't think Mayer's the kind of player that will want to sit out from a game. She'll want to play every single. Well, she has. She's played every single minute so far, anyway. So I would imagine it will be the same back two. I wouldn't be against it, I don't think, because for me the City game is more important than the Chelsea one, because that is Champions League for me rests on that City game. Because if we draw or win that, regardless of what happens in the other two, it doesn't matter. Whereas that City one, if we lose, we go to the final day massively nervous then about finishing in the top 3. So I would rather have Mayer for City than I would maybe risking in a Chelsea game. I don't know. Yeah,
but sadly, football doesn't care about your feelings, so it's not gonna happen. That is it. If she gets booked, she gets booked. This is the thing. She played 19 games in the WSL, and she's been booked 4 times. So we're not talking about somebody who gets booked like 9-10 times a season. It's generally in the WSL, bookings are somewhat of a rarity, I think, really. amongst players. They don't rack them up to a ridiculous amount unless you're Katie McCabe. So generally, I think you're probably okay in that one. You've just got to go with your best team. You absolutely have to. And, we all sit there about these permutations. Yeah, well, we'd probably rather have them for this player rather than for that. Ultimately, if it was the other way around, if we were doing this for relegation, you just want to get the 3 points as soon as you possibly could. So why not go out and get those 3 points against Chelsea? And then the City match doesn't matter. You beat Chelsea, that's it. Doesn't matter what we do against City because we've got the points. It's sorted. No problems. So, what you don't want to be doing is trying to keep all your eggs in one basket in the hope that it's going to be in one particular game. Something goes wrong against City, and then all of a sudden we're going into that game against Arsenal in a must-win game, and we've got Mayer and Millie both booked, and then we've got to play Aoife Mannion and Dominique Janssen, which is not a partnership I think I want to be going into that game with, because Leslie Russo will have a field day in that sort of a game. So yeah, we've just got to do it. Do it against Chelsea. Make it interesting. Even if they do go and get their 4 points, make it interesting.
It is a good point because, like you said, it's from our point of view, we could have that City game may not even matter by the time we get there if we win on Wednesday anyway. Something I wanted to mention a bit earlier on as well, when you're talking about us pressing and everything that when we're looking at the team, it is well obviously noting as well as people will know we've had the extended rest compared to Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea played a couple of games in the middle of when we played anyway. One of those obviously being against Barca. So, when you're looking at it from that point of view, that could be a good or bad thing because rustiness kind of creeps in a little bit, but it's not been that long for things to go. And I know that the team have had. Well, Mark said it in one of his interviews that they had an in-house game anyway to kind of keep the freshness going from that point of view. So, I think that gives us a bit of an advantage as well from that point of view that we haven't played this weekend, and we haven't played since West Ham. So the players have had that bit of rest, whereas Chelsea haven't, and that kind of gives us a bit more of a leeway to I guess expend a bit more energy from that point of view. But we'll wait and see. If you're asking me in terms of the midfield, I would go Dom, Hinney, and Toon. I think that worked at the start of the season, or it worked during the season. The start of the year, it worked against City away. It's worked quite well in those kind of games. I would go with that, and it's unfortunate for Grace to miss out, but I just think that's a more Dom adds the protection to the back line. You've got the energy with Toon and Hinney, and they keep the ball very well. So I would go for those. Were you laughing at Eva's comment there? It did feel like a bit of an off game, didn't it? Speaking of West Ham, anyone watch them at the weekend? Gee, I know Palace
absolutely battered Palace, didn't they?
Jeez. I said that I tweeted it shortly after. That front three of West Ham is going to get ripped apart in the summer. There's no way that is a front three of West Ham at the start of next season.
Just indulge me for a moment there, Rob. I'm going to throw a question at our esteemed host over here. Which of those three would you take? Don't just say any of them. Which one would you want? Who do you think would fit in?
I mean, it's between two. As much as I love Asai, it would be between Iweki and Martinez. But Martinez is more of probably what we need. I don't know. Yeah, it'd probably be Martinez, I think, more than... I mean, Rob, would you agree? Having watched it, because I know you're a big fan as well, because we were talking about it.
Yeah, I really like Martinez, but actually I think in the United system, I think Iweki's more the sort of player you could put in behind Turland to do more damage. I think as a creative force, a player that can score from further range, you've got that option to sort of have a floating in that role. I like Martinez because she does cause a lot of issues, but it does also at the same time feel like one of those players that she scores goals as the centre forward, and a lot of her good work's in and around the box, but she doesn't necessarily do a lot of the link up and the knit up play, which is what I think in United system they need more of. But I think either of them, both of them are good. I think again you're saying Asai there as well. Asai I think is a good player as well. I think all three of them are good. Again, that's largely the reason why West Ham have ended up staying up this season, because they've got the three of them in. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Martinez is still there next season, just because the fact she's still very young. She's unlikely, I think, to go somewhere and suddenly be the starting striker. At the moment, I think at her age, she's probably thinking that, I'm better off playing games, and maybe in, 2 years, sort of 18 months' time, there's more options on the table. To be honest, the only other place I could maybe see her going is PSG if they do end up losing Katoto.
which feels like a bit of a given at the moment, doesn't it? You know, from that point of view. Hadn't she only just joined as well? Because she went on loan, right?
So she joined last summer, I think, and then spent the first half of the season on loan at Freiburg, I think, at Freiburg, and did okay.
Yes, that's what I mean. So, you know, maybe when we're looking at it from that point of view, I can kind of agree, but I think, well, there's definitely going to be offers, you know, when you're looking at interest and things like that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. And I think just very quickly on, I know this is a United Chelsea preview, very off topic. Something me and Georgia were talking about yesterday. Obviously, when teams go down, obviously Crystal Palace got confirmed over the weekend. Sometimes teams above or in the WSL start picking that side apart that's gone down, some of the best players and everything else. I think Palace might be one of the first teams ever. I don't look at any of their players and think, yeah, I'd take them at United. Whereas in previous season, teams have gone down. I've gone, okay, you know, I wouldn't mind maybe them, you know, as a bit of a free hit kind of thing. But Palace, there genuinely isn't any.
The only player I want from Palace is Lexi Potter, and she's already on loan for us already. So
cheating the question, that is. But I don't think there is anyone else in that squad that I would.
Yeah, it's one of those. You look at that. Like I sort of said this one again. Obviously, Chelsea played them last week, and I looked at that Palace squad and I was like, well, you're just looking at the names in there. It was people like, you know, a lot of their best players have been players they've loaned in from. I mean, again, now one obviously couldn't play against Chelsea, and the issue showed because she's probably been their best defender since January, and even then, one defender's not going to make it. Potter's played well in the midfield, and even then, you know, she's not making it. It was that they got Stengel up front, who is a big, powerful forward, but not someone who's like going to score a lot of goals. Isn't a consistent goal scorer. I mean, Mia Cato, I've got no idea how Mia Cato was so expensive last year. She looks like the sort of player I look at and just think, yeah, you're neat enough and you're tidy enough, but I see nothing to understand why someone paid 375k for her. Like that's what I don't understand. If anyone can explain that, anyone is a Mia Cato fan or watched her for her national team, and Palace are just misusing her or whatever, please let me know. But this is one of the ones where I'm baffled by it.
I did just think of a Palace player actually, Elise Hughes. If Sean's still watching, he'll be very happy that I've given her a mention. But that would be somebody actually.
Who's that?
Elise Hughes.
Yeah, I was literally just about to mention her because obviously she did her ACL, didn't she? So I think the biggest problem we got with her is seeing her get back into the game and how she plays, having gone through the surgery and gone through all of that. She's only played a few games so far this season, but yeah, I think she would be my one if you want someone.
If you needed a backup, and I stress backup centre back, I think maybe a fourth or fifth choice. I think Alison Swaby would do as a fifth choice, but again, I don't necessarily think she's any better than, let's say, Aoife Mannion in that similar role. And obviously Mannion being homegrown has the benefit of being able to play fullback as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting conversation point because, like I said, usually when you look at those sides, there are a couple of standouts, but I don't think Palace, there's maybe any. Speaking of signings, there was a question for you much earlier on, Rob, before we get to kind of score pick and some other things. Question for you, because there's not really much point me and Barry has to answer this question. In terms of captain's first season at Chelsea.
Oh, I absolutely adore her. So last year I was talking to Bamba van Lieshout, who obviously is a Dutch women's football expert. And when Captain signed a few years ago, she said, you've got a bit of a gem there. And last summer, the plan was originally for her to go on loan and Julia Bartel to stay. But she was so impressive in pre-season, it basically flipped the switch, and it meant that, Bartel ended up going out on loan because Captain's played so well. And she's just come on absolute leaps and bounds. Like, she's become so good. She's so combative. She's so scrappy. She's got real quality in there as well. She works so very, very hard. She's so young. I mean, yeah, the fact that Captain's kept players, the fact we've brought in a French international, Orion Jean-Francois, and Orion Jean-Francois has sat behind Captain all season. The fact that Nusken, who was a key player last season at times, has had to be on the bench because Captain has been starting. The fact that Captain was getting the nod in things like, away at Manchester City in the league, home to Arsenal in the league, in the Champions League against teams. She's been brilliant. And I think she's only going to get better. I think one of the best bits of scouting Chelsea have done in a long time. I do think the Vrouwen era of Adize is somewhere where a lot of WSL sides should start looking at more. There's so many good young quality players in there, especially at PSV and at Ajax. because of the culture of them and the fact they bring through players, more and more sort of through, and they have players coming through at younger ages. Obviously, Chelsea already got Viola Berman coming in as well. They've bought the Lika Femting in as well as the goalkeeper. Frankie Liefting in as the goalkeeper. I think there's so much quality in that division. And someone else actually mentioned it about Palace's best player, Weirden, again, who came from Ajax. She's someone I think would actually go there. Being asked about Julia Bartel, I think Chelsea would probably be interested, open to a conversation on Bartel in the summer. Same with Bernabé. I think they accept they're both good players, but ultimately they want to play and they want opportunities. I mean, Chelsea do have interest in a Liverpool player, which I think is going to be a hot topic this summer. And I don't necessarily think it'll be part of that deal, but I think Chelsea would be open to have a conversation on both of them. Ultimately, my view on it, and this is over a lot of WSL clubs this summer, I think there'll be a lot of players who leave WSL clubs in order to play more. Not necessarily because they're not good players, but more just because they want to play more games.
Yes, that's that Liverpool forward you may be referencing, who I would love at United, but there is absolutely no way that Liverpool would sell it to us. So we can dream from that point of view.
Yeah, I can't see any Moxham signing for us. We've tried.
It's nice also to know that Mikato wasn't one of the top players in the Swedish league. It's nice to know that it isn't just me not existing on the right plane of footballing sphere. I know we've discussed this, Connor, and again, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's one of those ones where I've just looked at the player, and every time she's on, the WSL commentators always mention, she cost this much, and I'm sort of sat there thinking, why?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, is that the player that Chelsea want, Rob? Maybe a bit of Gemma Evans. I
I feel, I still think Gemma Evans probably, out of interest, Connor, what was the worst defensive performance? Gemma Evans last year against Arsenal, or Turner against Myra Ramirez?
Oh. That's actually a really good question. I'm going to say Evans because she's not here anymore.
You are such a wuss.
No, I think. Well, yeah. I mean, the Old Trafford one was, yeah. I mean, nightmares. However, I wasn't as annoyed. Or no, was I? No, I definitely was annoyed. Rob saw the messages.
I will say, one of the greatest pieces of lost media for this channel is Barry, your rant after that Old Trafford game. Set that to music, and I think you've probably got an Oscar-winning piece of short-form content. Oscar-winning best documentary there, to be honest.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, that is a horrible question. We've never asked something like that on this channel before. But there we go. I actually had a nicer question to round this off before we go to score predictions. Unless there's anything else, Barry, you wanted to go through?
No, I'm quite content.
There we go. Just a very quick one, because we've not done a show, obviously, since this got officially announced as well. But it did get announced. I don't even know when it was, but it may have been some point last week. United's participation in this World Sevens tournament, which is obviously coming about. Benfica, Bayern, and I want to say it's Ajax, I think. the other signs in there, I couldn't remember who the fourth one was there, that are confirmed already in this Sevens tournament. It's a bit of an interesting one. Yes, I think it's smaller pitches, smaller goal, and we have 30-minute games, 15-minute halves. It's roll-on subs and the rest of it and everything else. What do you think on this, Barry? Because it's kind of divided opinion. The prize pool is massive. It's in the millions, in that respect.
And that's exactly right. Let's just cut straight to the chase. There's no fluff about this. People are sitting here talking about, but England, I nearly swore there, England, £5 million. I've sat here on this show and said about 8 million times the difference that £5 million would make to a women's football club. So on this case, you've got to try and chase the money. You've got to. The biggest problem I think we've got is that if the women go and win £5 million, what's Sir Jem Ratcliffe going to do with it? Because he's not going to give it to the local homeless shelter. He's not going to let it, subsidise the disabled group. He's not going to send it to Brian Robson. He's not going to make sure that we can have Alex Ferguson for a bit longer. it's very simple that if we win that money, it needs to be part of the women's team budget, and they would need to have that ability to use that and use it to progress. So for me, there's no fluff around it. Like, it's a 3-day tournament. It's not the end of the world. It's really not. I think it's a good thing to do. It's something new, something different, and people often get upset about that, but they forget that Man United was built on something different. Like, when we sit here and talk about European trophies, we're sitting here talking about the Champions League and how important it is for Manchester United to get into the Champions League this season. Let's not forget that it's because of Manchester United that England have teams in Europe. Because if it hadn't been for Matt Busby and Jimmy Ryan sitting there and fighting and basically telling the league, look, it doesn't matter what you want, we're going to go and do this. If you don't like it, tough. If they hadn't done that, who knows whether or not we'd have had English teams competing in Europe. Certainly not in the time that we did. So I just think it's so incredibly important that we sit there and remember that just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. And actually, it's worth a go. And, it's right at the end of the season. Everything's finished. What is there to lose?
I know a lot of people obviously talk about the players in terms of the schedule because there is an international break right after the thing. But I think people are missing the point that it's literally 30-minute games. It's roll-on subs on a smaller pitch. Like, it's not as... I guess physically demanding as you would have, and because it's only 3 days. Well, this isn't like a month-long tournament.
You don't ask Rob this question because Chelsea have been going absolutely loopy over the fact that you'll forgive me, I've forgotten which player it is, but somebody went and played 45 minutes in a friendly they didn't need to go and play, and as a result, ended up a little bit injured. Was that right?
Broadly. Like, roughly speaking, for somebody that doesn't really sit there and watch absolutely every bit of news, like I am trying to cover the entire world. Yeah, no, yeah, accurate.
So, and that was for a ridiculous friendly that just helps the manager, apparently. So they're more of a danger to women's football than new things that could potentially get eyes on the product. Like, it's a no-brainer for me. 3 days, go away, come home with some money, brilliant. Why not?
I'm intrigued now to see if Chelsea go into it, to be honest. I know, well, the report was obviously that pretty much every WSL club was interested, and don't blame them with the money on offer. But with Chelsea now not in the final of the Champions League, that was kind of the thing, wasn't it? The Champions League finalists will not be in it. I'm intrigued now whether Chelsea will go into it.
From the conversations that I've heard, it doesn't sound like they will. I mean, obviously, it's possible they might choose to change their mind, but I think there's an acceptance at Chelsea. They've played so many fixtures this season. And there's been some injury. Someone said about Leon, it wouldn't shock me if Leon ended up in there. To be honest, I said to someone, it wouldn't shock me if they really wanted to put a name in there. It wouldn't shock me if they tried to get London City Lioness or something stupid in it, or one of the NWSL clubs to agree to come and do it. Just Chelsea because I'd
go and do 7-a-side. How are they supposed to pick 7 players out of 700? That's mental. Like, there's been so many people upset not being able to play.
I must admit, I'm not against new ideas, like you said, Barry. My objection to this, I do think it's my big objection to it is I do feel that with roll-on, roll-off subs and things like that, it's going to be a bit just fragmented. Like, one of the beauties about football is the fact that you're not getting, you don't get constant interruptions, and it doesn't feel like, sort of basketball. Whereas I do feel this one might end up being a little bit more sort of basketball-y. But I am really intrigued, like the likes of Ajax or something. Ajax, I think, will really suit 7-a-side, like how well they move the ball. One of the issues they had in the Champions League was the fact that, they were dealing in larger pitches, but in small areas, in tight areas, they move the ball brilliantly. Benfica, again, similar side, they play really nice sort of football. I do think, I said to someone, it'd be really interesting with the goalkeeper. I did say one thing that would make the tournament more interesting for me is not allowing, if you have proper goalkeepers, having a rule that they can say only use their hand literally on the line, but other than that, they've got to effectively play rush goalkeeper. I think would make it more interesting. It would make it more enticing. I'm not sure are the goals standard sizes.
Didn't they say they're smaller? I'm sure they said they were making them smaller for it as well.
Because that's the other thing.
Let's not forget, once you get past the WNL, That's what happens at tier 5. You can have roll on, roll off subs. So it doesn't necessarily impact on the game. It just depends on sort of how they're doing. And this is an underrated message, by the way. No, not that one. I'm sure it's a lovely one that's underrated. This one, whole generation has forgotten the beauty of the soccer sixes. I can distinctly remember.
Even I used to play that.
On Sky, the soccer sevens as well, and it used to be all the legends of like Chelsea,
the Masters, yeah.
Oh, it was brilliant watching them. You'd see people like Dennis Irwin, and it's honestly brilliant watching some of these players do that. So, I think there's definitely a market for it, and it may not be like look at the Club World Cup. I see DAZN putting that up there as like for the first time ever there'll be a Club World Champion. I would know there's definitely been more. It's like but for the first time ever that anyone's really going to pay attention to it because there's an actual tournament to be won. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing, and it's something new. It may not be the way that it stays, but we've got to try new things, right? I think just sticking here with the same thing time and time again and just completely copying what the lads do isn't the way forward. I think they've got to forge their own way and they try things, and they might not work, but it's not the end of the world. I think we're too critical. We're too critical. Like even with the guys in charge of the league, the WPLL, we're being really critical of, we don't want this American version, we don't want this, we don't want that. And we've got to understand that something's got to change. We need to make the game profitable, whilst also maintaining the tradition of the country that invented the game. So, yeah.
See,
only the money.
I reckon they should go, Georgia mentioned about rush goal or something. Does anyone remember the rules back down the park spider keeper as well, where it was whoever was in the box last, they were the keeper. So maybe they should do that as well. Get Mayer back there, making some saves or something. Maybe that should be the rule. Screw it, let's go full on park rules.
To be fair, generally, I think that would make it. The one thing I do hope with it, and I said this, I hope this year they are experimental and they do things that aren't necessarily conventional, because I think unless you try it like that, you're not going to attract the audience. And yeah, especially as I said, with things like 7-a-side, things like that, you don't, teams might play completely differently with 7-a-side. There's going to be a lot more focus on keeping the ball. I think, with the pitches being a lot smaller and a lot tighter, you're going to need to be a lot more compact with it. I think it actually might improve, some of the technical element of it as well.
And let's be clear, I'd much rather watch this than that rubbish that Agri Ginger's managing. Like how that's not a TV show, God only knows. People need to give their head a wobble about what they're watching nowadays.
It just keeps coming up on my feed. I just scroll straight past it.
This is why, Barry. Again, I stand by what I say every time I come on this channel. You just need to be in control of everything. I feel like just make you prime minister, and I feel like the world is a much better. It's sort everything by lunchtime tomorrow. Everything be sorted. Everything be sorted.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, yeah, Becky, maybe it will help us to move the ball a bit faster. Well, you've got to in 7-a-side. There's literally no rule on that one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm intrigued to see how it works, to be honest. And I'll be intrigued to see who United take. I think there'll be a couple of big players that won't go, but I think we might see a couple of players that maybe haven't seen so much game time, and maybe a couple of the youngsters as well, which would be quite exciting. So there we go. One to look forward to after the cup final. It's only 3 days after, so one straight into it on that one. Right, we'll round the shop with a score prediction, and this is going to be interesting because I haven't thought of one. I can't lie. I thought I would have done by like an hour and 10 minutes in, but there we go. Who wants to kick us off? What we're going for on Wednesday?
Just having a look, seeing what I've gone for in the prediction league. That's the easiest way.
I mean, to be honest, after you.
I mean, I could throw mine out. I think we win 2-1. Just.
I think it'll be Desmond. I think it'll be 2-2. But I could see it being one of those games that one team is leading 2-1 for a long time, and then someone scores a late equaliser. And due to how late it is, both sides just say, right, well, that's it. We'll settle for the point.
Okay. I can confirm. Don't all copy me. I went 2-1 United.
That does seem to be the general consensus in the chat, or a lot of people.
Can I just say the real key thing will Fred the Red be saving the penalties? That'll be the real thing we're all looking forward to. How many penalties will Fred the Red save?
Do you know what?
I've heard that Fred the Red is not only going to not save the penalties, but once he's missed it, he's going to turn around to Connor and stick a couple of fingers up at him.
Do you know, I am very glad.
Have some of that. Do
you know what? Because there's people in this chat who sign me up to be taking these penalties on Wednesday.
Oh, that's true. That is tremendous behaviour.
We need to make this happen.
I'm very glad I've not had to
take a penalty against Fred the Red, and Fred to be told of your comments just before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Grudge match.
Fred turning into Lev Yashin just for one penalty only.
You want content people pay to see. That's it.
But the thing is, you know what will happen when because I've been slagging it off the whole time. He'll save mine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Honestly, it's what we all want to see. And I'll be completely honest. What we want to see is like Martinez level shithousery from Fred the Red.
Yeah. Let's be clear. Connor's never going to be Fred the Red. There's no way he's getting his hair in that. No chance. It'd have to be the only thing that Connor could wear that would save his hair would be like, do you remember? Well, you wouldn't, but Rob will. Eggheads with Dan Aykroyd.
Yes.
Wear that. That'll be about it. You Google it, Connor. You'll see what eggheads look like, but it's obvious. So yeah, that would work. Or Marge Simpson.
I know what that is. That's horrendous. So we've got 2-2-1s and a 2-2, and 3-1 United. But I'm just going to go through some of these score predictions while you two are laughing. 3-0 United. Jeez. Berlin's gone for a 1-1, a 1-0. True for. I'm assuming that's a 3-1 defeat because you've put it as 1-3. Clean sheet. Fallon is one clean sheet away from. Although Van Domsla's back now, that was strange. She's playing that's earlier than people thought. She wasn't supposed to be back until the Champions League final date, but all of a sudden she's back. So the Golden Glove. I mean, I don't think Fallon can still. Well, she's got it essentially. It's just whether it's going to be shared or whether it's going to be hers or not. So I think one more secures it for her. I think depends on what happens with Arsenal. But yeah, it's a bit annoying. So yeah, hopefully another clean sheet for Fallon.
Van Domslar would have to keep 3 clean sheets, right?
Yeah, she's 3 behind now, right?
Because we're definitely going to score 1 against Arsenal, so that's fine.
There we go. And she's one off Mary's record as well. So she needs one more in the final 2 to the record 40.
Just in regards to the predictions, can we ask if it was you versus Fred the Red, what corner are you putting? What kind of penalty are we getting? Trivella into the top corner, little Panenka, or sort of side foot into the bottom corner. The old Ron Atkinson down the middle.
I shouldn't be saying this now, just in case Fred's listening, but my preferred penalty is a bottom left because I'm a right footer, so I kind of like to bit of power, swing it into the bottom left. That's my preferred area.
I can't work out if you're playing mind games with Fred or not now. Telling him you're going to go left and then you're just going to whack it right. So you can be the one going, hey, like this rivalry, man. It's playing with you. The absolute housery is unreal. Am I going to go? Knowing you'll end up Panenka in it.
Anyone who stood next to me at LSV, whether it happens on Wednesday or next season, are going to see this in full flow as my resentment builds throughout the season. There we go. We need to end this show. Mara's got another show in 10 minutes anyway, so we do need to get off. Doesn't catching strays. Thing is, for anyone new watching this channel, they're not going to have a clue what we're on about. I just find that quite funny. People have no idea why. But anyway, right, we will wrap it up there. Otherwise, we'll be going all night. From that point of view, and I actually need some sleep because I'm shattered. It probably has, to be honest. This channel does get about these days.
We need to hear from Fred.
Rob, is there anything you want to shout out while you're here?
I mean, no, no. You've broken me completely.
See, that's what people come to the channel for, right? Honestly, there we go. For people who say, like, I get that asked a lot, and obviously, because we've done a couple of player interviews and things like Dream Interview, all that kind of thing. Fred, if you're watching this, let's get on the channel. Yes, Becky's on the same wavelength. Next interview.
Oh, surely not. You can't. Like, they're not
I
allowed
reckon
to
we've got to do
speak,
it.
are they?
We'll find a way. Put it through like a voice changer thing or something.
Oh, that's even worse. A mascot dressed up and then some sort of voice changer. So, Fred, what are you? Well, I'm thinking that. Oh God, no! I just no nightmare.
I reckon it could work. There we go. Full suit. Oh dear. Oh well, it's good to have you back, Erling, on Wednesday. It's been a while since we've seen you at LSV, so that'd be good. See you in our usual spot in North Stand, I'm sure. But there we go. A very quick question, actually. I was going to ask you earlier on, Rob. Proper in the sky. Yeah, there you go. But in terms of Chelsea, in terms of how many fans are you expecting? Because obviously the kickoff time has kind of skewed it for a lot, not just Chelsea, but for home fans as well, being 8:15. Are Chelsea bringing an away following of a decent number?
Yeah. I think the club, have put on subsidised coaches, so I have to give some credit for that. And I believe there is a fairly decent following making the way down there. Obviously, people are aware that if results go the way they could potentially, then it could be a title celebration at the end of it as well. So I think that does spur people on. But yeah, I mean, I want to just stay on both sides. I think this is an appalling time to rearrange this game for, and I don't understand why it couldn't have been earlier. Why it needs to be 8:15. Obviously, I appreciate Sky and their paymasters, but it's an appalling kickoff time.
Tell me about it. Some of us are driving up. We're going to get back ridiculously late it'll be Thursday morning by the time I get home. Driving back, which is not ideal. I don't know what like you 7 o'clock or something like that. It's because they wanted both games, and they obviously Arsenal are earlier on, so they've put both games kind of one after the other. But yeah, it's definitely going to kill the attendance a little bit, I think, on Wednesday, from home and away. From that point of view. But there we go. Right, we'll round it off there because Mary's got another show, and also I want to get off because that light that is currently blinding me right now. It's not those kind of lights are not great when you're shattered, and it's making me even more tired. But anyway, we'll be back potentially later in the week. Obviously, the men play on Thursday. Usually we'd have a match reaction the day after. We're potentially going to merge the match reaction and a City preview on the same thing, put out on Friday. So stay tuned for that. All of the socials, All For United WFC, and all of those kind of good things. Rob, it's been brilliant to have you back on. I know there was a bit of back and forth in the chat at the start, but I think something.
No, all good fun. And like I said, looking forward to the game on this, and looking forward to the cup final. Yeah, it could be a good fun to meet at Wembley again.
There we go. So I'm sure you'll be back for that as well when we come around to the cup final in a couple of weeks as well. Thank you to all of you in the chat. Have a good week all. If you're there on Wednesday, enjoy the game as well. The last one at LSV for the season as well. So we'll make it a good one, I'm sure. Make sure you go and check out All For Women's Football as well. There's a lot of good content over there. Barry's up live in 7 minutes' time. So much to discuss across the world of women's football. So make sure you check in all of that out. And we shall see you guys later in the week.